Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. When we booked the cruise to Mexico, I thought maybe this was what we needed. A break from the monotony. A chance to put the phones away, press pause on our busy schedules, and remember why we ever said I do in the first place. Nicole had been talking about how burned out she felt, and I, always the fixer, thought maybe a week of ocean views and umbrella drinks would do the trick. We got in the balcony room. I even splurged on a couple's massage package. But I should have seen it. The warning signs weren't subtle. They were blinking red, screaming for attention, and I still missed them. The first day felt normal. We checked in, explored the ship, took those cheesy boarding photos where she leaned into me like nothing was wrong. We even held hands for a minute. There was laughter. It wasn't deep or natural, but it was there. She pointed out the rooftop pool and said she wanted to swim under the stars. I bought us matching beach hats. I was hopeful, stupidly hopeful. By the next morning, something shifted. Nicole was distant at breakfast, scrolling through her phone like it was an extension of her hand. She barely touched her food. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed me off with, "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." Her voice was clipped, like every word cost her effort. I offered to explore the ship together, maybe book that massage early. She declined. "I need some time to myself. Gonna hit the spa. You go do your thing." My thing? My thing was supposed to be us. I went to the gym instead, burned through an hour on the treadmill, telling myself not to overthink it. But I noticed she didn't return until almost dinner time. She came back in a robe, hair dry, and smelling more like coconut sunscreen than lavender oils. When I asked how the spa was, she smiled without showing teeth. "Relaxing," she said, and turned her back to me. That night, during the formal dinner, she wore a green dress I hadn't seen before. Tight, short, showing more than I was used to her revealing. She paired it with red lips and silence. Every time I tried to talk, she nodded absently or offered a one-word response. When the waiter poured the wine, she downed it fast and signaled for more. I was invisible. She laughed at some joke from the couple next to us and leaned in to hear more, leaving me sitting there with my fake smile and my untouched plate. I looked at her and realized I didn't recognize the woman next to me. Not anymore. The low point came at a group karaoke event on Deck 4. I didn't want to go, but Nicole insisted. "It'll be fun. Don't be such a grandpa." I followed her like a dog, hoping to be tossed a bone. She picked a spot right near the front and waved down drinks like it was a college party. Halfway through someone's terrible rendition of "Don't Stop Believin'," she shouted out, "This is Tyler's theme song." He peaked in high school. A few people laughed. I didn't. I wanted to disappear into the floor. I was the punchline again. When we got back to our cabin, I asked her to stop. "Just stop making me look like an idiot in front of strangers." She rolled her eyes. "You're too sensitive." It was a joke. "You need to lighten up." "It's not a joke if I'm the only one not laughing," I said. She huffed and turned away. "Then don't come to karaoke next time." Problem solved. That was the moment something broke in me. Not snap, broke. Quietly, like a hairline fracture that finally spread just enough to split. I stared at her back for a long time, wondering how we got here. Wondering what version of myself I became that allowed this. I wasn't perfect. God knows I'd made mistakes. But I never humiliated her. I never made her feel small on purpose. The next morning, she left early for spa time again. She barely said goodbye. I sat alone on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the open sea, and thought about what I really came here hoping for: connection, warmth, maybe even a spark of who we used to be. But the truth hit me hard. I was chasing a woman who didn't exist anymore. It wasn't the spa she was going to. That I knew in my gut. But I didn't have proof. Not yet. Still, the tension in my chest grew heavier every time she picked up her phone and tilted it just enough so I couldn't see. Every time she smiled at a message but couldn't be bothered to smile at me. I told myself I'd wait. That I needed confirmation before accusing her of something unforgivable. But part of me already knew. The question wasn't if Nicole had checked out of our marriage. The question was when. By the time day 3 rolled around, I knew something was seriously off. Nicole had slipped into a version of herself I couldn't read anymore. Her voice was lighter but detached, like she was playing the role of chill vacation wife. while her eyes stayed glued to her phone screen. That morning, she claimed she had a spa scrub scheduled, then a hydrotherapy pool session, and after that, a yoga detox class. "You wouldn't want to sit through any of that," she said with a condescending chuckle as she pulled her oversized beach tote onto her shoulder. I nodded, letting her go without a word. I'd learned by then not to argue. But something twisted in my gut as I watched her walk off, too confident, too rehearsed. She wasn't hiding guilt. She was daring me to notice. I didn't follow her that morning. I didn't have to. Instead, I walked the ship alone, watching couples laugh on lounge chairs, flirt at breakfast buffets, dance near the poolside DJ like they hadn't carried 10 years of marriage uphill. I sat with a black coffee and tried to remember the last time Nicole had looked at me the way she now smiled at her phone. I couldn't. That memory had been replaced by the sting of watching her as someone else's validation instead. That night, something cracked. We were invited to the late dinner seating with a table of strangers, young professionals, newlyweds, and a few solo travelers. Nicole showed up wearing a white sundress that clung to her like she'd picked it for someone specific. She was glowing, not in a romantic way, but in the way someone glows when they know they're getting away with something. She barely acknowledged me at the table, instead locking into a flirty rhythm of conversation with the young guy sitting across from her. He looked like he worked out for a living and had never filed taxes. I watched her laugh, tilt her head, play with her hair, all the things she hadn't done with me in months. When I tried to make a joke about the ship's awful music playlist, she cut me off mid-sentence with, "You wouldn't know anything about playlists. You still use CDs." The entire table chuckled. My ears burned. "Wow," I muttered. "Nice." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, relax. It's called banter. You used to be better at taking a joke. I used to be better at being treated like a husband." I said under my breath, not even sure if anyone else caught it. After dinner, she told me she had a late-night steam room session. "Detox," she said again, as if that word somehow made her disappearances noble. I waited 10 minutes, then left the cabin and headed down 2 decks, moving quietly through the shadows and crowds of tipsy tourists. I kept a distance as I watched her exit the spa area, not in gym clothes, not wet from a sauna, but in the same white dress, untouched, makeup still perfect. She didn't see me. She was too busy turning a corner near the outdoor cabanas on the upper sun deck. I followed slower now, blood pumping, breath tight. I heard laughter. Not hers alone. A man's. Peeking around one of the cabana curtains, I saw her. Nicole, barefoot, sitting on a lounge bed with a cruise staff member. Young, tan, all teeth. He handed her a piña colada. She sipped, then leaned into him. I watched her pull a towel across her lap like it was the only layer of modesty left. Then came the movement, slow at first, rhythmic. Her body against his. My stomach flipped. I stepped back, the sound of her laughter still echoing in my ears. I didn't confront her. I couldn't, not yet. I didn't even feel anger in that moment. Just a hollow detachment, like someone watching the final scene of a movie they'd already predicted. I returned to the pool deck above and wandered until I found a quiet bar. That's when I saw her, Alyssa. I'd noticed her once before, reading alone with a drink in hand, legs crossed under the glow of string lights. She wore confidence like Nicole wore perfume, naturally, without trying. She looked up, sensing my stare. "Long night?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, you could say that." She smiled, not the way Nicole smiled. This one had curiosity behind it. "Divorced?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "Same." We talked. Nothing forced. Just easy conversation about everything except who we were running from. Her laugh didn't come at my expense. She actually listened. An hour passed, then 2. At some point, I realized I wasn't looking back toward that cabana anymore. I was looking forward, toward her. I didn't plan what happened next. But neither did she. That night changed something in me. Not because I'd finally seen Nicole for who she was, but because I realized I didn't have to keep carrying the weight of her choices. I was done being the background character in a story I never agreed to be part of. Alyssa wasn't a distraction. She was a mirror. Sitting with her, talking under the stars, sipping drinks we didn't even taste, I remembered how it felt to just be seen. Not judged, not mocked, not minimized. She leaned forward when I spoke, touched my wrist when I paused, and laughed like she meant it. Her eyes didn't wander. Her phone stayed face down. It was like she'd sensed the storm inside me and decided to sit with me through it. After a while, she asked, "You want to go somewhere quieter?" I nodded without thinking. Her suite was tucked on a different deck, larger than mine, with a view of the water that seemed to stretch forever. She poured us both a drink, and we sat on the balcony. She didn't push, didn't ask for details. She just let me be. And that silence? It was the first peace I'd felt in months. Eventually, I told her, not all the dirty parts, not the names or the history, just the basics. That I was married, that she wasn't who she used to be, and that I'd seen something I couldn't unsee. Alyssa just nodded. "You don't have to explain," she said. "Sometimes it's not about cheating. It's about being erased." That line stuck with me. Being erased. That's exactly what Nicole had done. Slowly, over time, with every eye roll, every joke at my expense, every night she chose a screen over a conversation. Later, lying beside Alyssa, I stared at the ceiling, not out of guilt but out of clarity. Nicole had already thrown everything away. I just finally stopped trying to tape it back together. When I left her suite before sunrise, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "See you around." No games, no strings, just honesty. I needed that more than I knew. By breakfast, Nicole was back to her game. She waltzed into the buffet with a fresh tan and an extra spring in her step. She talked about needing to hydrate from all that detoxing, and I just nodded along. She didn't know what I knew, didn't know what I'd done. She sat across from me like everything was fine, and I let her have that illusion. Because now I had mine too. The next few days, I played it cool. I gave her space when she wanted it. Let her disappear for wellness workshops and sunset yoga. I knew better, but I wasn't chasing her anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was patient. On day 6, we had our couple's photo shoot. Nicole insisted we dress up, said we needed a souvenir from our romantic getaway. I didn't fight it. We stood in front of that fake ocean backdrop with our 4 smiles and fake closeness. The photographer clicked away, complimenting our chemistry. Nicole leaned into me, wrapped her arms around my waist. "We should frame this one," she whispered, her lips brushing my ear. "Definitely," I said. "I've already got something planned." Afterward, while she was fixing her makeup in the hallway mirror, I reached into my pocket and handed her a small black USB stick. "What's this?" she asked, curious. "Our cruise memories," I said with a smile. "Thought you might want something special." She looked surprised, genuinely touched for the first time in days. "You're sweet," she said. "I'm sorry I've been distant. I just needed time for myself this week." I looked her in the eye and nodded slowly. "Understand. We've both had time to reflect." She kissed me on the cheek and tucked the USB in her bag. Later that night, I watched from the bar as she opened it on her laptop in our cabin. I wasn't even in the room when she saw what I left her. On the screen, a photo montage, her in the cabana with the staffer, legs under a towel, drink in hand, smile wide. And then, a split screen, me and Alyssa, laughing on her balcony, arms inked with fresh, matching tattoos from the port in Cabo. Her face frozen in mid-kiss. Mine peaceful for the first time in years. Nicole didn't say a word when I walked in. She just sat there, eyes glassy, mouth slightly open. I grabbed a drink from the mini fridge, sat on the couch, and raised my glass. "To clarity," I said. She opened her mouth, probably to spin some lie or excuse, but I raised a hand and cut her off. "Don't. You got yours. I got mine. We're even." That was a lie. We weren't even. I'd already filed the divorce papers. They'd be waiting when we docked. The night after she opened that USB, Nicole didn't speak a word. She sat frozen in front of the laptop, staring at those side-by-side shots like they'd punched her straight through the gut. I could tell she wanted to scream, cry, claw her way back into control, but there was nothing left to grab. I didn't offer her a single explanation. I didn't owe her one. Every second of silence was my victory. Every flicker in her eyes, the twitch in her cheek, the way she fidgeted with the zipper on her bag. It all told me the truth she'd refused to admit since day one. She never thought she'd get caught, and she never imagined I'd beat her at her own game. She didn't ask where I got the photos. She didn't demand to know who the woman was. She didn't ask if I had told anyone. She just sat there, shoulders sagged, unraveling in slow motion. When she finally did speak, it wasn't an apology. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice small but sharp. "Why would you put that with her?" I tilted my head, calmly sipping my drink. Funny. That's what I was asking myself on day 3. Why would you sneak off with a staff guy on a cabana night instead of being with your husband? Her jaw clenched. "You don't know what I've been going through." "No," I said. "I don't. Because you stopped talking to me a long time ago and started talking to your phone instead. And apparently, to a guy with a name tag and a towel." Her eyes narrowed. "This is revenge." "No," I said coolly. "This is clarity. You think I sat back all week just waiting for a breakdown? I was waiting for truth. And now I've got it. On camera. You humiliated me," she said, standing, her voice rising. "You went behind my back and got some girl to—" "Don't," I warned. "Don't spin this like I started it. You cheated. You lied. I just ended the show before it could get worse." Nicole stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her anymore. And she didn't. Because I wasn't him anymore. The man who used to beg her for attention, who used to tiptoe around her moods, who used to hope for scraps of affection like a dog waiting by the table. That man died the night she climbed into someone else's arms while I walked the deck alone. She tried again, her tone softer. "Ty, we can fix this. People make mistakes on vacation. That doesn't mean everything's broken." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You think this started on vacation? This didn't begin with a cabana and a piña colada. This started months ago, when you stopped looking at me like I mattered, when you chose attention over loyalty, when you decided that whatever you needed, it wasn't me." "I was lonely," she snapped. "You never noticed anything." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "I noticed everything. I just didn't want to believe it." She flinched at that. The rest of the night passed in silence. She slept on the couch, curled up like she was the victim. I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, already picturing my lawyer's face when he got the paperwork I prepared before the trip. I didn't want to scream or make a scene. I wanted out clean, fast, absolute. By sunrise, Nicole was gone. Left a note on the counter, pathetic scribble about needing space to think. I didn't care where she went. I slipped into a t-shirt, grabbed a black folder from my suitcase, and went to the onboard business center. Internet packages cost extra, but I didn't blink. I emailed the final draft to my lawyer. Subject line, "Execute immediately." The cruise still had 2 days left. I spent them with Alyssa. She didn't ask what happened. She knew, and she didn't try to replace Nicole. She just kept being who she was, honest, kind, real. We laid on loungers and let the sun bake the stress off our skin. She pointed out clouds that looked like animals. I actually laughed at her stupid dolphin shape. I hadn't laughed like that in years. On the final night, Nicole showed up at the farewell party wearing the same white dress from the cabana night, as if she could rewind the clock. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile rehearsed. She even tried to take my hand when the slow music played. I stepped back. "We're done, Nicole." She blinked, stunned. "You're really going to throw away 10 years? "You already did," I said. "I'm just clearing out the trash." She looked around, realizing we had an audience. Couples dancing, a few familiar faces watching. She dropped her hand, her pride deflating right in front of me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I already regret staying this long." Then I walked away, right past her, right into the crowd, right in my future. The morning we docked, the sky was smeared in a pale orange haze, soft and almost too quiet for the chaos Nicole had caused. Most passengers were smiling, hugging, snapping goodbye selfies, exchanging social media handles like they'd shared a summer camp instead of a luxury cruise. I stood at the edge of the railing with my bag slung over one shoulder and Alyssa beside me, both of us sipping the last watered-down coffee the ship had to offer. There was no need for words. The silence between us wasn't tense. It was comfortable, knowing, like we'd both survived a storm and could now enjoy the breeze. I hadn't seen Nicole since that final night. She'd ghosted our cabin after the party, and I didn't ask where she went. Maybe she slept on a bench or bummed a floor from someone else willing to listen to her lies. Either way, she didn't deserve a word from me when I walked off that ship a free man. I handed my customs form to the officer, smiled, and moved through the terminal with nothing but calm in my chest. No guilt, no doubt, just the promise of something new. Alyssa and I shared a ride to the airport. I booked my own flight, left space between us on purpose. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I wasn't desperate to fill a void. I just knew I'd earned my peace, and for once, I was ready to sit in it without rushing to the next thing. Before we parted, she hugged me. Not tight, not lingering, just sincere. "You'll be okay," she said. "You already are." And she was right. When I got home, I opened the front door to a house that no longer felt like a trap. Her shoes weren't in the hall. Her perfume didn't linger in the air. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was mine. I dropped my suitcase, walked straight to the kitchen, and popped open a beer. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the email from my attorney confirming the divorce filing had been processed the moment we reached shore. Nicole tried calling. Twice. I let it ring. Then came the text. "Can we talk before lawyers get involved?" I didn't respond. 2 hours later. "You're making a mistake. We should do this privately, not drag it out." Still no response. By nightfall, she sent a voice note. I deleted it before pressing play. She could speak her truth to someone else now. The next few days were quiet, methodical. I packed her remaining things, what little she had left, and boxed them in the garage. When she finally showed up to get them, I didn't say a word. I stood at the door while she pulled bags into her car, pretending I didn't notice her red eyes or the way she hovered a second too long, hoping I'd crack. I didn't. "Is this really it?" she asked, one hand on the car door. I nodded. "Yeah, it was over the second you chose someone else. Everything after that, just delayed paperwork." She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to justify. I shut the door before she got the chance. Weeks passed. I started sleeping better. I got back into the gym. I picked up extra work and booked new clients, people who weren't part of the world I used to orbit. I kept my head down and rebuilt. Quietly, steadily. Nicole's friends stopped reaching out. Some blocked me. A few sent awkward messages pretending not to know what happened, asking if I was okay. I didn't bother responding. My circle had never been tighter, and that was a good thing. One night, while organizing files on my computer, I came across the cruise photos again, the ones from the professional shoot. Nicole's smile, my fake grin. We looked like we had it all. But next to them, I'd save another file, the USB footage. I clicked through it one last time, not to hurt myself, but to remind myself why I walked away. Her betrayal, my clarity, Alyssa's laughter, my peace. I selected everything, dragged the files to a folder marked closed, and archived it. Then I leaned back in my chair, took a long breath, and smiled. Not because I'd won anything, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was finally free from pretending. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. The days after Nicole moved out were quieter than I expected. I thought the silence would be loud, full of what-ifs and echoes of old arguments. But it wasn't. It was still, like the storm had finally passed, and I could hear myself think for the first time in months. No more second-guessing every glance. No more rehearsing conversations in my head, hoping I'd say the right thing to avoid another one of her moods. I started to recognize my own voice again, buried under years of biting my tongue. She tried to claw her way back in, of course. Not in some dramatic movie-style apology, but in little manipulative flicks disguised as reconciliation. She dropped off a sweater I didn't ask for, left a voicemail saying she'd had time to think, and maybe we'd been too quick to throw things away. She mentioned our wedding once. She tried to frame it like a shared failure, two people who just lost their way. But I knew better now. This wasn't shared. It was hers. Her choice. Her actions. I just cleaned up the wreckage. When she came by one afternoon pretending to need a receipt from the filing cabinet, I met her at the door with it already in hand. She lingered on the porch, arms folded like she was guarding something fragile. "I saw your post," she said softly. "The one about moving forward." I raised an eyebrow. "You stalking my socials now?" "No," she said quickly. "A friend sent it. Said you look different." "I feel different," I told her, "because I'm not pretending anymore." She took a breath, like she was working up to something heavy. "I made a mistake," she said. "You think I don't know that? I messed up, Ty. But we had good years. Doesn't that count for something?" "It did," I said, "until you decided one night in a towel with a stranger counted more." Her face fell. That wasn't the whole story. "No," I agreed, "but it was enough of it." She looked like she might cry. I didn't flinch. You don't miss me? She asked. No, I said simply. I miss who I thought you were, not who you actually turned out to be. That broke her. She didn't argue again, just turned, walked down the steps, and didn't look back. Inside, I sat on the couch and exhaled hard. That was the last piece of her hold over me. Gone. I felt the final thread snap, and with it, a kind of peace I didn't know was possible. Alyssa messaged me later that evening, just to check in. Still keeping your head above water? She wrote. I sent back a photo of the fire pit I just built in the backyard. Not just above water. Floating. She asked if I'd ever come her way. Maybe grab coffee. Maybe not. No pressure. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't need to. I just knew it didn't feel complicated. And that was enough for now. The next morning, I started painting the bedroom. New color. New sheets. New energy. I took down the wedding photos, boxed them without ceremony. I didn't burn them. Didn't need to. That part of my life wasn't some tragedy. I just outgrew it. Later that week, I ran into one of Nicole's friends at the grocery store. Melissa. She gave me that pity smile people wear when they're dying to ask questions, but trying to look respectful. How are you holding up? She asked. Solid, I said. Really, she pressed. Because Nicole's not. I nodded slowly. I'm sure she isn't. She said you shut her out, that you didn't give her a chance to explain. I looked her dead in the eyes. She explained everything the second she climbed into that cabana. I just finally listened. Melissa didn't say much after that, just muttered something about hope things work out, and ducked into the next aisle. I walked home with a grin. That night, I lit the fire pit, cracked a cold drink, and watched the flames flicker. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Divorce papers officially filed, court date set. I raised my glass in a silent toast. Not to revenge, not to endings, to freedom, to finally being done with everything that tried to break me. Court wasn't anything like I imagined. No dramatic outbursts, no last-minute pleas, no teary confessions begging me to reconsider. Just a plain room, walls the color of dust, a wooden bench that creaked when I sat, and a judge with glasses perched low who barely looked up from the paperwork. My lawyer was calm, too calm, like this was routine, like broken vows and fractured marriages were just business. Maybe they were. Maybe mine was now. Nicole walked in 10 minutes late, wearing a blouse that tried too hard and an expression that didn't match. She looked deflated. Not sad, just hollow, like someone who knew the game was over but still hoped for overtime. She didn't look at me. Not really. Her eyes scanned the room like there might be a fire escape hiding somewhere. We sat on opposite sides of the table. The lawyers exchanged pleasantries, then moved on to the details. It felt surgical, efficient. Our names echoed in the room with no warmth. Property division. No contest. The house stays with me. The joint account already split. No kids. No spousal support. Just signatures and formalities now. Then came the part that mattered, the evidence. My lawyer slid a sealed manila folder across the table. Inside, time-stamped stills from the cabana. Her, the staff member, the towel, the drink. Then the next page, me and Alyssa, inked arms, drinks in hand, balcony smiles. Her lawyer didn't open it. He just nodded, lips tight. Nicole stiffened. That was the first real emotion I saw in her all day. You're submitting this? She finally asked, voice a whisper. It's already submitted, I said. This isn't about hurting you. It's about showing the truth. She turned to the judge. This was supposed to be uncontested. It still is, my lawyer said. This is just context for the court file, not a debate. Nicole's fingers clenched. She looked ready to break something, maybe scream. But she didn't. She swallowed it all like she always did when she realized the audience wasn't on her side. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered. She nodded once, then twice, too fast. The judge cleared his throat. Based on the agreements and submissions, I see no cause to delay finalization. Divorce will be granted pending final paperwork. That was it. 10 years dissolved in 10 minutes. Outside the courthouse, the sky was cloudy, threatening rain. Nicole lit a cigarette and stood by the curb. I almost kept walking. Almost. But I stopped. She looked up as I approached. I thought I had time, she said. Time to fix it. Time to talk. You had time, I said. You spent it with someone else. She exhaled, smoke trailing sideways. I didn't know you'd change. I didn't know I could, I replied. But I did. Because you forced me to. Was she worth it? She asked, tone clipped. She wasn't the point, I said. She just reminded me that I still had value. You're the one who taught me I needed to remember that. Nicole dropped the cigarette, crushed it under her heel. You're cold now. No, I said, turning. I'm clear. Back home, I pour myself a drink, not to celebrate, but to mark the moment. The moment I stepped fully into a life that was mine again. I burned the last photo of us together. Just one. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had my memories. I had my lessons. I didn't need the evidence. Alyssa called that night. So how'd it go? She asked. Fast, I said. Final. Good. You deserve final. We didn't say much after that. Just sat on the line breathing. No pressure. Just knowing someone was there. That night I slept deep. No dreams. No flashbacks. Just silence. And peace. The apartment wasn't much. A 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor with creaky floors and a kitchen stuck in the 90s. But it was mine. The day I moved in, I unpacked slow. No rush, no pressure. Just a quiet rhythm, box by box, item by item, figuring out what pieces of my life still belonged and would have been just dead weight in disguise. I tossed the old photo frames first, the ones with fake smiles and stiff poses. They hit the bottom of the dumpster like they belonged there. It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity, a way to start with less noise. The wall stayed empty for a while. I liked them that way. Clean, undecorated, like a mind finally allowed to breathe. My mornings became sacred. I'd wake before the alarm, sip black coffee by the window, and watch the sunrise creep up behind the strip mall across the street. It wasn't a view of the ocean. It wasn't a 5-star suite on a cruise ship. But it was real, and no one was lying to me in it. I took on more clients at work. Started shooting small events again, graduations, local businesses, even a few headshots for college seniors trying to get their LinkedIn profiles in shape. There was something healing about the click of a shutter, the way it captured a split-second truth no one could fake. Unlike the last 10 years of my life. Word got out, of course. Small towns can't help themselves. People started whispering about what happened. Some offered sympathy. Some avoided me entirely. A few came out of the woodwork with their own stories, quietly dropping lines like, I always wondered if something was off about her, or you seem too good for that anyway. I didn't need their validation, but I didn't resent it either. Everyone likes to feel seen, even if it's just in hindsight. Nicole wasn't doing so great. I heard through the grapevine that she'd bounced between 2 friends' couches before finally renting a room from someone she barely knew. The guy from the cruise? He'd ghosted her a week after we docked. Surprise, surprise. Turns out beach flings don't make great partners when the cabana curtains close for good. She tried to apply for a loan to get her own place, but didn't qualify. Karma doesn't wear a cape. It just waits until you run out of excuses. One afternoon, I ran into her outside the grocery store. Her hair was tied up, no makeup, eyes sunken. She looked tired in a way that makeup couldn't fix. She tried to play it casual. Hey, you look well. I am, I said simply. She nodded. That's good. I waited a beat. And you? Her smile was thin. Getting by. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I just nodded and walked inside, leaving her in the heat and silence of her own choices. Alyssa reached out again not long after. Just a simple text. How's freedom treating you? I sent back a photo of my new apartment with the caption, Finally feels like home. We talked that night. No big declarations. Just catching up. She'd taken a contract in another state, busy with long shifts and late-night grocery runs. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't need labels. We just existed together in the space that opened up when all the lies were gone. One night, I found myself driving with no destination. I ended up at the old park where Nicole and I had our first date. I parked and walked the same trail, this time alone. I passed the bench where we'd once sat and laughed like teenagers. But there was no weight in it now. No sadness. Just the acknowledgement that life moves forward, even when people don't. I started planning a trip. Not to escape, but to explore. A national park, maybe. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest. I booked the tickets without telling anyone. Not out of secrecy, but because I didn't know anyone's explanations anymore. The thought alone felt liberating. As I packed my bag, I saw the old USB drive sitting in my drawer, the one with the photos. I picked it up, turned it over in my fingers. Then I walked to the balcony, looked at the night sky, and tossed it into the dumpster below. No ceremony, no last glance, just done. This was my fresh start, and I wasn't wasting a second of it. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.